talking a moment ago, Discovery saying it will make COVID-19 vaccinations mandatory for all staff and, it would seem, suppliers. But that'll be from the start of next year. In a statement, the medical scheme administrator says it's making the rule to ensure the safety of its workers. I'm joined now by Osborne Molatudi, MD of the Employment and Labour Law Specialist, Molatudi Attorneys. Osborne, good afternoon to you. Do you think Discovery has the legal right to do this, to make vaccinations, mandatory for all of its workers?
Indeed, they do have the legal right, and thank you, Stephen, for having me on your show. Yes, in terms of the directions that were published by the Minister of Employment and Labour, yes, any employer can introduce a mandatory vaccination policy as long as that employer would have conducted a risk assessment in its workplace, identifying employees who may be exposed to the pandemic, employees who may work in areas where they may be exposed to members of the public and related.
I mean, what's interesting about this is that it seems the debate is changing slightly. I mean, I remember the Labour Department issuing the circular that you speak to. COSATU has said on the record it agrees with the circular. It also believes that employers would have the right to do this. I mean, that's the biggest organisation representing unions. At the same time, though, their spokesperson, I think in reaction to Discovery today, said that they don't believe that an employer can just unilaterally impose this on workers. So then it would seem there's a proper process you would need to follow.
Yes, Stephen, there has to be a process to be followed, and one would assume that that's what Discovery did. In terms of the directions, within 21 days of the publication of the directions, an employer is then required to do a risk assessment and thereafter to then decide to put in place a mandatory vaccination policy. So indeed, there has to be an engaging process with all the relevant stakeholders. An employer cannot just wake up one morning and say, well, from today, with immediate effect, I'm going to make the vaccination policy mandatory. So one would assume that Discovery has indeed followed that process with all the relevant stakeholders in its workplace.
There have been all sorts of threats of court action on this. I haven't seen a case actually coming, but I mean, the South African Human Rights Commission at one point got involved in the public debate around this. Another trade union, Solidarity, got involved around this. Osborne, are you still expecting that there's going to be a court case? I mean, I'm sort of amazed it hasn't happened yet, frankly.
You know, in my previous commentary, I did say that one would wait and look forward to a court case that will test this issue, because there has been a lot of debate around it. But if you look at it from an operational requirements perspective, Stephen, and I have said it this numerous times, that an employer has an obligation to maintain a safe and a healthy work environment. And now that we have this direction being published, you can't have a situation where employers are expected to sit back and do nothing about containing this pandemic. And one of those measures is precisely what Discovery is intending to do, to conduct a risk assessment and thereafter to require its employees to be vaccinated. If those employees refuse, and I know this is a contentious issue, if those employees refuse to be vaccinated on two main grounds, then Discovery and any other employer will be entitled to terminate their employment for operational requirements. And I have argued that that is the safest route, because no employer would want to be settled with employees that are either showing symptoms of the COVID-19, or they may likely be exposed to members of the public and thereby causing a further transmission of the pandemic and related. So on that ground of operational requirements, I believe an employer will be entitled to terminate the employment. Of course, we need a court case to test whether or not that dismissal can be sustained.
I'm sure the next time we speak it'll happen. Osborne Molatudi, thank you, from Osborne from Molatudi Attorneys. Do appreciate it. It's a complicated issue, mandatory vaccination.